Big pop to the upside today, and a great example of how you must use discipline if you're going to be a successful trader. Pete and I break that down and a lot more on the Rebel's Edge. Bang! Welcome back. Pete in Savannah, Georgia.
How is Savannah?
Yeah, it's pretty nice, although it's foggy today. If I've got the shades pulled behind me, but if I didn't, it would just look almost the same because it's so foggy. It's like you're in San Francisco, Pete. Yeah, Savannah's got some great food and a lot of ghosts, I guess. The third most haunted city in the U.S.
Well, I guess that's either really good or really bad.
Depending if it's Ghostbusters ghosts or something worse.
Man, we had a busy weekend, John. It was wild. I know both of us were glued to the combines and all the different news stories out there with Boeing and this and that and the other. So we got a lot to cover, man.
Yeah, and I guess even today, Pete, couldn't even get it into the rundown in time. But Apple getting a big ruling against them. Swedish firm Spotify basically comes out and, the European Union ruled in Spotify's favor. And for those who don't know, that's a Swedish-based company, I think, Pete. And they ruled that, Apple can't exact the fees that they're exacting under European rules anyway. And so, boom, there goes $2 billion until the appeal happens at least. So, yeah. Wow, that's some big news against Apple, falling by about 3% on that. But Pete and I are going to break down some stock news for you folks. We're also going to give you our opinion on those same stocks, whether we buy them or sell them. And we've got Macro Minute and fantastic futures. So let's dive in, Pete, to macro.
Let's do it.
Today, I'm going to say Macro Minute is Bitcoin. Trades through 64, 65. Now it's through $66,000, Pete. It's just running to the upside. And in the macro picture of things, that's one of the things I think everybody's talking about, the success of that ETF and Bitcoin.
Well, I would exactly agree with you, John. As a matter of fact, I was going to say the same thing. 63,000, 64,000, 65,000. Now we're over 66,000. And that's just today. But the reason why it is so macro is it's not just Bitcoin. It's anything and everything that's around Bitcoin that's being affected as well. So take a look at MSTR or some of these different names that we always correlate to these things, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Some unbelievable moves to the upside, to downside. You always just wonder, though, when does the music stop? So that's why, to your point, John, discipline is definitely a big part of this market because we are seeing moves like we haven't seen in a really long time that are affecting the entire market. When you look back to last Friday, as a matter of fact, we hit the new record highs in the NASDAQ. Why did we do that? Well, because the SMH was absolutely ripping to the upside and the semiconductor world was just flying once again. So there's triggers everywhere, catalysts everywhere, but you better be disciplined.
Yeah, and we'll get to that, but Pete's right. You always want to be disciplined. Hashtag DDA. Discipline dictates action. All right, let's talk for a second, Pete, about fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Well, fantastic futures could have easily been Bitcoin, but this is up as much as Bitcoin, folks, in terms of percentages, and that's nat gas. And Pete was pounding the table for it, saying, hey, seems like it got awfully cheap and now it's bottomed out. Maybe that was what, Pete? Was that 170 or 160? It's
161.
Back towards 2 right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that close. So I'm going to say nat gas traded over at the CME and the futures and options. That is my fantastic future.
And one of the most volume-based is crude and some of those types of things, John. We talk about nat gas, and you're kind to say that. A week ago, nat gas was 161. Today, it was 197. It actually is pushed up at 2. And then all of a sudden, you look over also at crude oil, which keeps on flirting, John, getting over 80 and then kind of backpedaling off of that. So it certainly is an energy, I think, related futures as far as the fantastic side of it, because the moves that we are seeing are absolutely incredible to the upside. And don't forget, crude oil was about 72 not too terribly long ago. So this is a pretty nice move to the upside for crude as well.
Yeah, this will be something that the refineries will be passing that expense right along when they turn that crude oil into diesel, fuel oil, or gasoline, or Jet A for that matter, I guess, Pete. So we got to start paying even more attention to the airlines because of it. Yeah. All right, let's dive in, Pete, to the stock side of the world with Super Micro Computer. Now, this one, we have had unusual activity in it. This one has moved up fast and furious. In fact, Pete, I believe year over year, it went from $96 to $1,000 in 1 year. And we've talked about it repeatedly on the show. It's going to be added to the S&P 500 effective March 18th. That's the day after St. Patty's Day. I think there'll be a lot of bloodshot eyes staring at their portfolios on the 18th, Pete.
Well, it's an unbelievable run, John. And then when you look at the fact that they're getting entered into the S&P 500 as well, and they're going to boot out Whirlpool. But this is a name that's just been absolutely moving to the upside in a big way. We talked about the semiconductors. Well, anything related to NVIDIA, and all of a sudden you compare this particular name with NVIDIA, their revenue rate is now surpassing NVIDIA. So this is something where they are absolutely just on fire by percentages and so forth. This is a company that is really, really moving to the upside. John, I can't even keep track of it. Every time I go to look at it, it's trading either 1,100, 1,200, 1,300. I mean, it's literally all over the place. And this is another one. If you want to be involved, you can be involved, but you better be extremely cautious and at least have discipline in your back pocket, because this is one of those that can move in either direction at an unbelievable pace.
Yep. There is no doubt that this is a hot stock. It's up 20-fold in 2 years, Pete, 10-fold in 1 year. So it ain't slowing down, at least not yet, folks. Mm-hmm. All right. Now let's talk, Pete, about C Limited, SE. Now, C Limited, we had unusual option activity in it multiple times. And take a look, for instance, at one of the more recent ones here, Pete. The 27th, just last week, we had them buying April 48 calls, and they rolled those up. And then they rolled up again. And then the stock shoots up today, Pete, and that yellow arrow you see on the screen, that was up to $11. I think it traded to $11.30 or something like that. Just those calls. And they're all the way out in April, Pete. So they've got another month and a couple weeks to trade. So this is big deal. And the fact that the CEO said that the fantastic earnings, yeah, there's your DDA. Discipline dictates action, because it does. That's what I'm talking about, Pete. And marketrebellion.com/get started is how you guys could get started trading just like me, just like Pete. I mean, you want to trade like us, you got to learn about options.
Right. And the leverage that you get from that. John, the numbers that they put up were pretty daggone impressive. The sales were up 4.5%, a little bit better, 4.8%. Revenue's up 28%. And then the merchandise volume was up huge too, 29%. So the numbers are all looking great. The only thing I'd caution people on is it's had a great run. The stock is absolutely ripped to the upside. And the one thing you want to look at is, okay, from a valuation perspective, what they do and how does that compare to some of the others in the field? They're getting a little bit expensive, John. They're trading at about a 50 PE. So be a little bit cautious of that, because the stock has had a heck of a run to the upside.
It's always good to be disciplined. And that's why I put Pete's phrase in there, discipline dictates action. Because if you didn't, folks, if you didn't take your profits this morning when the stock popped like that, it went right back down to unchanged on the day, even down on the day after a 14 to 15% run. Again, you can hold on to these things too long, and that means you're being a pig. And, we always talk about you don't want to be the pig that gets led to slaughter. So be disciplined.
Yep.
All right. Macy's, Pete, symbol M. Now, they're closing a ton of stores, but that's not the reason it's up today. That would have contributed to perhaps a little bit of a pop. But the big pop today and it was over 12%, was Arc House Management and Brigade Capital Management have increased their offer. In other words, they're saying, hey, we want to buy you. And I think Macy's and some of the people that have been there for a long time, Pete, might say, yours. So you can have it.
Yeah, I think so too, John. Well, it's a little over a $6.5 billion bid. So they've jumped it up once again. And you're talking about $24 a share. The previous was $21 a share. The stock is almost right there. And it's had a nice little bit of a move to the upside, John. But they are going to shutter 150 stores. That's the plan that they've got. Comp sales were down about 6% year over year. I kind of side with some of the folks out there that are probably leaning on, hey, look, sold to you, because this is a heck of an offer given the situation that Macy's finds themselves in. They still got a lot of shorts in this stock, by the way. So there's a lot of different factors that are going into play right now. But interesting to see where the stock is right now. I think this would be one that they're going to have to consider, John, because this particular bid certainly seems fair to me based upon everything we've seen out of Macy's over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and, they're closing that big flagship in San Francisco, Pete, Union Square. They're going to be closing a lot. And I think Brian Sullivan might have tweeted out, Pete, that they're closing the big Macy's downtown, or, just over by Penn Station. So if indeed you're closing all of these iconic spots, maybe it's just going to be partially bricks and mortar and mainly online. I don't know, Pete. This is certainly, it might be feasting for their competitors, though, Pete. It might mean that Nordstrom and some of the survivors will do better. We'll have to see. All right. One more, Pete. Lee Motors, LI. Now, Pete and I talked about the progress they made because the quarterly numbers were great. And the stock popped from 35 to like 46, or maybe even touched 47. And now it is round tripping all the way back down, Pete, just a few weeks later, because their February numbers are pretty pathetic. And, if you see a drop that big month over month, people are going to get scared.
And they are scared, John. They are selling as well, but they're still above where they were post earnings, or at least ahead of earnings. So I'll tell you what, this is one, and we talked about this. The balance sheet is absolutely incredible. So there's no worries there. Obviously, February deliveries being as bad, pathetic as it was, is absolutely incredible. They only delivered 20,000 cars. They were expecting quite a bit more than that. That was down 35%. March deliveries, though, they claim they're going to hit somewhere close to 50,000 vehicles. So that would be a nice number to recoup and actually start moving back up to the upside potentially again. Like I said, John, when you look at the balance sheet, though, these guys cash to debt, it's only $90 billion that they've got there, cash versus debt. And then the free cash flow, $44 billion. I pointed this out before when we talked about Lee post earnings. I want to point it out again because when you look at those numbers, that is really, really impressive. And if they bounce back like they say they will in March, this is a stock that I think once again gets itself back up into the middle 40s.
Yeah, I am right there with you, Pete. I think it's a gift that it comes down this much, back down into the mid 30s. And, they dropped that big 35% month over month to 20,000 cars. So if indeed they put up 50 in March, first of all, they're setting the bar pretty damn high, Pete. But if they can do it, you're exactly right. This thing will have a 5 handle. It'll be 50 something, not just 45 if they do that. But that's an if right now rather than a sure thing. Yeah. All right. Well, Pete, I think we had a hard time picking which of these videos from the combine we would use, but I'll let you narrate it because your pal Deion Sanders was narrating this, and this is from 2019, folks, but take a look and a listen.
No matter what situation you place him in, Troy Atchie, he can run.
Why are you surprised, Dan?
Oh, I know why I'm surprised. I can't say he can run.
That's the best part. You know why I'm surprised, and they focus right in on the kid.
You're saying it with
You don't see that much.
You're saying it in tone.
Let's call it what it is.
I'll tell you what, though, John. That was 2019.
Yep.
Now, 2023, I don't even know if he could go into it. First of all, it's funny. He was being funny, and it was funny. But I think the reality is you start looking around the NFL right now, and especially after the combines, and you look around, I don't care what the guy looks like. There's guys that can run. And I'm talking about different colored people, black guys, white guys, whatever. I'm also talking about every position, big guys, little guys, whatever. Some of these guys are just motoring, John. Absolutely incredible. It is a different game today than it's ever been. And I think each year it just gets that much better from a talent perspective. These guys are absolute freaks. Speaking of freaks, I wanted to start off with one other one, though, John. I thought we'd go to the NBA. Then we'll come back to the combine so we don't overdo it. There are two teams in the NBA that have been sitting on top all year. Minnesota Timberwolves in the West and the Boston Celtics out there in the East. And the Celtics have been absolutely dominating this year. It's really been incredible. And I don't think it's really been something that everybody is talking about as much as they should. So here's what I got for you. Okay. They just last night beat Golden State. Remember Golden State with their great little coach and everything else? Curry. Yeah. So 50 points they beat them by, John. They had 3 games this year where they have beat opponents by 50 or more points. 50 or more points. They're 29-3 at home. They were undefeated for a long time. They're now 29-3 at home, 19-9 on the road. When you look at just about everything, by the way, their 10 game, you always look at what do they look like over the last 10 games. You could actually look at 11 for them because they've won 11 in a row. This is a team that's absolutely on a roll. And here's the best part. I think you'll appreciate that. Their top 8 players all play unless unhealthy. And I'm talking about load management. That's another reason why people love the Celtics, because it's a blue-collar city. People love going to those games and supporting all the different sports out there, John. But this load management, these guys ain't doing it. They are not doing it. When you look at all their basketball players in that front 8, those guys are showing up. Unless they've got an injury, they show up every single night because they know kids are trying to go to these games and they want to see Jason Tatum. They want to see the different players. They want to see the visiting players. And so they're hopeful on that, but they know the Boston guys are going to play. I think that's part of the reason why people are so excited about the Celtics right now, because they're putting in the time and they're not doing the load management thing.
Yeah. Well, they've got a great hockey team, Pete, and those hockey fans in Boston are some of the best around. So it's very competitive city for everything, for parking spaces, for getting into these games and things like that. It is something that I think the players are very proud to be playing before fans like that are very knowledgeable fans. And also the Celtics, Pete, have been in the playoffs and going fairly deep in the playoffs consistently now. Now, your Timberwolves have been right at the verge. They've been in the playoffs, and they usually lose in the first or second round. But this could be a whole different Timberwolves team this year, and that would be great if those two could meet. I think that would be a great matchup, Pete.
Yeah, that would be fun. Actually, the Timberwolves slipped a little bit. They lost a game last night, and right now, for the moment, Oklahoma State just bounced in front of them. So, not Oklahoma State. Oklahoma has just got in front of them. So, it should be interesting. Anyway, on to the combine, John. So, what were your takeaways? My takeaway was the depth at wide receiver, the depth at offensive lineman, and the depth at those edge rusher guys that everybody wants, everybody needs. That was incredible. Was there anybody specific? Because you were sending me stuff, I was sending you stuff, but you were sending me time after time after time on the 40-yard dashes, and absolutely incredible. A record-breaking year, actually, for the combine.
Yeah, and some of the skill things they do, Pete, I wasn't quite as impressed by. These are fantastic athletes. So, just full stop right there. Fantastic athletes. But some of the drills that they do, like the quarterback, how hard does he throw? Milton, of course, that started at Michigan and then went down to Tennessee, I think, right, Pete? Yep. He was one of the strongest. I think he was throwing like 62, 63 miles an hour. So that's a lot of speed on that ball. And right behind him, is JJ from Michigan. He was, I think, the second fastest, but his accuracy on some of his passing, Pete, to the guys running out patterns and things probably didn't help him because he's a guy, of course, at Michigan that's not throwing 40 times a game.
Right.
They throw sparingly, I'll call it, Pete, because as Pete has said all year, they run a 3 tight end offense. They're going to smash you in the mouth and say, go ahead and try to stop us. And as soon as you do come up to the line to do that, then he throws. But JJ's a good quarterback. He'll go somewhere. I've heard, a lot about him going to the Vikings, Pete.
Yep. Number
That's
11.
what I keep hearing, that they liked the interview and so forth. But so my favorite, I like the tight end position a lot this year.
Yep.
Big, strong tight ends. Doesn't matter if they played at a small school or a big school. There's a kid that played at a very small school, Pete, that is very impressive. He's 6'7", 6'8", and 275 pounds. That's a huge target, and he's super athletic, big white kid, and he can run fast and dunk because he also plays basketball. So he's not just a basketball player that they're trying to convert. He's a football player that also plays basketball. So
shows that
he's very impressed by those tight ends. And I'm anxious to see who the Raiders go for at quarterback too, Pete, because that's going to be an interesting position. And I've seen Cousins mentioned a lot as the guy that might be going over there.
Yeah, it's funny in Minnesota, they really don't know. They haven't been able to get a clean read on whether or not Cousins is going to stay, or can they afford to have him stay, I should say. They'd love to have him back, but can they? And I think that's kind of where they stand. So it makes it a little difficult. There's a lot of landing spots for him. Who knows where it's going to end up being, John, but it's not that far away because free agency begins the 13th. So it's coming up on us pretty quick. So that's something that'll be fun. I think when I looked at the receivers, John, one of the things that stood out for me was, so you get 2 kids from LSU, right? Both of which are absolute freaks when it comes to their ability on the field, but also the times and so forth that they put up, because there is a difference. If you put up great times at the combine, but you don't have any results, who cares? When you see these guys, they have already the results, and then all of a sudden you're running, and these guys are running in that 4.3 area. It's absolutely unbelievable. And one of those 2 receivers, John, is a little bit bigger than the other guy. He's like 6'3", 210. But he ran a 4.33. That wasn't so bad. And then I started looking and I go, let's see. You already have Jamar Chase. You've got Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckham. You want to talk about a group. And actually, there's a much longer list than that. But LSU receivers into the NFL is ridiculous. I think they had either 8 or 9 players that were wide receivers that are playing in the NFL right now. So you can add 2 more to that little number as well. But I think the most impressive was the kid you and I have been talking about forever, John, Joe Alt. He's 6'9". He's 320 pounds. He ran a 5 flat 40. He had a vertical of 28. He did the 3-cone drill in the top 10 all-time offensive linemen. We're talking about a guy who really could be special out of Notre Dame, but his father and I played against each other in high school, so I always got to pub him up, but he doesn't need any help. The kid is absolutely there already, but a lot of fun guys to watch there. That McConkey that you and I talked about last week, the receiver down at Georgia, he ran a 4.39. So I'd say he's got enough speed to be somewhere in the NFL, and he's a heck of a player, great route runner as well. So the combine is now finally done, but now they've got to digest all that, go to free agency, and then comes the draft. So like we always say, John, the NFL is, never ending, 365 days a year.
Yeah, and Pete, isn't the draft in Detroit this year?
It is.
Did I get that right? Okay. So that'll be very interesting as well because of what happened with the Lions and, the coach being aggressive and not going for the field goal and so forth. There'll be a lot of talk about that and how he kind of left the fans hanging with that one. But
John, did you see Jerry Rice? He was classic. So he's there, and he wasn't there as a scout. He was there to watch his son, okay? Now, Jerry Rice, one of the all-time greatest receivers in the NFL, right? I mean, absolutely unbelievable numbers his whole career. And that was in a different NFL because they didn't throw it as much as they do now. And his numbers still stand up. But so he's there and he's got this beautiful necklace with all this gold and diamonds all around it. And it says 7-Eleven. And they said, what does that mean? And he goes, open 24. He's open 24 hours a day. He's always open, John. It's great, man. It was awesome.
As a receiver, always open.
Yep.
Because he was too, Pete.
Yep.
Great route runner. There's another guy that was always open too, Randy Moss.
Yep.
And when you look at the seasons he put in Minnesota, Pete, and then with the Patriots, Randy Moss was, even when he was covered, he was open because he'll go up and take it away.
Yep.
That guy was, a whole different level. I'm not saying he's better than Rice, but I'm saying that I don't know if you had the choice between those two. I don't know who you take, Pete. That you really can't lose with either one.
No, two, they're absolute Hall of Famers, deservedly so. Yeah.
Well, make sure you join us tomorrow, folks, for the Rebels Edge. Will be coming your way at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, as we do Monday through Thursday. If you'd like to check out all the offerings at Market Rebellion, go to marketrebellion.com/get started. That's marketrebellion.com/get started. And tomorrow we'll push the book, which you guys love telling us on social media. You love the commercials. Well, they're ramping those things up too, so you'll see them more. You can claim your book, by the way, at itsnotanoption.com. That's itsnotanoption.com. Thank you, Jared, for throwing that up there. Whoops. There we go. Anyway, thank you, folks. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.